Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue our journey watching Paul and Karine on 90 Day Fiancé before the 90 days. This is the beginning of season 2, so let's get to it. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and I'm also a professor. And when I watch this show, I always have something to say. So let's see if anything of interest comes out of my face for y'all.
I'm hoping once we get married in Brazil, Karine will actually enter America with a green card as my wife. But there's one big issue that may stand in the way of our marriage. Karine's parents were very alarmed when they found out about my criminal record. So they requested for me to bring my entire criminal record to Brazil so they can review it. These are my polysealed documents.
Okay, that's interesting. Makes sense that the parents would be concerned about his criminal past. They'd want to know the details. And they wouldn't want to hear it from his mouth, but they'd want to read it in black and white in the documents. And for my own curiosity, I'm interested in learning this story.
Roughly 10 years ago, I was accused of burning my own property, and I was incarcerated pending trial for 18 months until I took a plea agreement and got out on probation. The second case...
Okay, so it's a little bit more detail than we got last time. So he says, I was accused of setting my own house on fire, arson. And he also talked about in last season how he was going through a really difficult time because of a relationship and that he had an emotional breakdown. I don't know if he used that term, but I think he might have. And then here he gave a little bit more detail that he was incarcerated because they held him in prison to await his trial, and it took 18 months. And then finally he just said, fine, I'll just take a plea agreement so I can get out of prison. So that's interesting. Let's hear more.
My ex-girlfriend and I both took out restraining orders against each other. And I ended up sending her a text message, which directly violated that order. So I got locked back up over it.
Okay, so what does that mean? That there's a wide range of, possibilities there. Sometimes when couples are going through difficult breakups, they will vindictively take out restraining orders or protection orders against each other. And often the courts will just grant it because they figure, well, it's better these two stay apart, so I grant it, stay apart. And that could be just a vindictive move, or on the other end of the spectrum, it could be violence from either one of them or both of them. Threats, all sorts of terrible behavior, criminal behavior from him that could have resulted in the restraining order. We don't have any data on that, so there's a wide range of possibilities there. Then he talked about how he went back into prison and was incarcerated again for violating the protection order, the restraining order, and that the nature of that was texting her. Okay, what was the nature of that text? Was it, hey, how's it going? Or was it, I'm going to kill you? We don't know. Maybe we will never know, but that's what I'm hearing when I hear that. I was like, well, I need to know more information there, but it's a little bit more information.
Karine's father, he's an ex-cop. I'm really concerned after he sees what's in this file, he may tell Karine that she needs to break things off with me. Hope that I don't lose a woman that I love over something that happened years ago.
Now, I will say, as I said during the Jeffrey and Varia episodes, that we have a big problem in our society and societies around the world with stigmatizing people who have been incarcerated before. It's a terrible, terrible thing. You probably know more people who have a past of being incarcerated than you know because people don't talk about it. They don't like to talk about it. Now, there's some good reasons why the stigma developed. The stigma isn't good, but there are some valid reasons, meaning that if you've been incarcerated, there's a somewhat greater chance that you're someone that is unsafe and someone to be avoided, particularly in a romantic relationship. But by no means does it indicate that you're going to be a bad partner. Most people, I'm guessing, who have pasts of incarceration are no better and no worse as a potential partner than someone who hasn't been incarcerated. The reverse would be true as well, right? Just because you've never been incarcerated doesn't mean that you are going to be a wonderful partner in marriage. We all can agree on that. So the reverse is true as well, that just because you've been incarcerated doesn't mean you're a nightmare of a partner. And we really have a big problem with that in our society. There's a massive marginalization, dehumanization, prejudice that is waged against people who have been incarcerated before. And if we really want to improve things, meaning we want to help people not commit crimes in the future, then we need to reduce stigma. We need to help them to, get the life that they want to have, which is a normal life that anyone else wants. Having said all that, there's a small percentage of the population, 1, 2, 3%, maybe around 1 or 2%, who are sadistic, psychopathic, antisocial, sociopathic individuals who don't care about other people's feelings. They like to con people. They have no problem harming other people. They have no remorse. They have a long stream of criminal activity in their past and will continue to do so until they're stopped by some sort of outside force. And those people can sometimes end up incarcerated. There's a greater percentage of antisocial people in prisons. So there's that. And make no mistake about it, those people are dangerous. And I have some training in forensic psychology and assessing people in prisons. And I'm here to tell you that, not from firsthand experience, but from people who do that sort of work, that some of these people are scary individuals. Watching the TV show, what was it, about the early FBI? David Fincher directed it. Mindhunter, of course. So in that TV show, you see that there are some decidedly upsetting individuals who probably should be incarcerated, because if they're not, they're going to hurt other people. Having said that, there are plenty of psychopathic people who can learn how to be a productive, non-harming member of society. So even if you're psychopathic, it doesn't mean that you should always be imprisoned. Anyway, my point is that we have a big problem with stigma. And for Paul, he, exhibits the knowledge of that stigma, that it's really hard for him. And I'm kind of glad that the show is actually highlighting this fact, because when you look at Paul, you think, well, he seems like a mild-mannered, nice person. I don't know. Maybe some people look at him and think he's some sort of weird psycho. I don't know what are people saying about him? Comment below. Let me know what people are saying about him. But I imagine, at the very least, that he doesn't fit the stereotype of someone who's been incarcerated before. And that might help to reduce stigma. This show actually does a fair amount of that, where and reality TV in general exposes us to the reality of human variability. And that helps to destigmatize things. So at least I hope it does. Anyway, let's continue watching.
There's another big issue with the Karine that's really been bothering me. And once I get to Brazil, I'm going to confront her about it face to face. Since I've left Brazil, I found out that Karine has been talking to other American men on social media. I see all these flirty messages on there, hard eyes. I'm really worried that because Karine's parents don't approve of my record in my past.
So there's a lot of possibilities there. So he is observing that for Karine online, she is posting encouraging emojis to other people on Instagram, it looks like. What does that mean? Does that mean that she is just being friendly? That's on one end of the spectrum, and it's completely innocent, and her love for Paul is not in question. Or on the other end of the spectrum, far end of the spectrum, is she is absolutely keeping her options open, maybe even being involved with other men. Who knows what's happening. And there's a lot of things in between. So we just don't know, and I guess we'll find out, because this show, if anything, is always going to show us those conversations. So we'll see what happens. By the way, if you haven't yet, please subscribe below or hit the bell. When you hit the bell, you get a notification whenever we post a new episode, so you always know when we post a new episode. And we post sometimes several episodes a day, because during the pandemic, this is all I'm doing for the most part, just sitting in my office and talking to y'all on YouTube. Also, comment below, let me know what you think, and if you could like this video, and really all the videos that we make, that would really validate my existence, as I always say. I mean, I joke, but it really does make me feel good when I see people liking videos, particularly when there are a lot of negative comments. There's not usually a lot of negative comments, but because usually, like for me, when I watch YouTube, I never comment on YouTube. I never, ever comment because I just feel like, why? I don't know. I'm shy in that way, but I will like a video. You know, I will be like, okay, I'll encourage them. Here's my little like, and I'll be the tiny little wind collective beneath your wings to, you know, encourage you to keep going. Well, it is that way for me too. Anyway, let's get back to the TV show.
You may be trying to keep her options open.
I'm going to be leaving soon. The airport. Aeroporto. Io airporto pronto.
I really love Karine with all my heart and soul. I really want Karine to be my wife, but I don't want it to just be a meal ticket to come to America.
So it's always interesting to hear the Americans say that, particularly at this phase where they're worried that their partner from another country is just considering them to be a meal ticket, or that, you know, their green card. They're just a walking green card. And it's a valid concern, I suppose. But every time that they say that, I always am thinking there's not any evidence of that, unless it's like the Davids of the world. If you watch, you know, the recent season, there certainly are examples of that on this show, but not the ones that I'm reacting to. None of you actually have even asked that or react to those, because I don't think they're very interesting to watch. It's usually so clear what's happening in those situations. Caesar, the situation with him, I'm not fully aware of his story, but I saw a little bit of it. Anyway, it's always just interesting. And as I always say, you can have both. You could both consider someone to be a meal ticket and be in love with them. For everyone out there who's watching right now, if just take an inventory of what your income level is. Well, let's say you fall in love with someone and that person earns 100 times more than you do per year. Well, you're going to look at that situation and be like, score, major score. I fell in love with someone. That's great. And they earn, you know, however many millions of dollars a year. I don't know, 100 times, say 1,000 times what you earn. You're going to be like, I'm set. I don't have to work again for the rest of my life, or at the very least, I don't have to worry about bills for the rest of my life. So you can have both. And when you come from a community where it's hard to know if the police are going to protect you, if hard to know, and I don't know Karine's community, but it's possible that a lot of unsafety, a lot of danger is happening regarding healthcare, regarding food resources, regarding, you know, cleanliness, regarding all sorts of things that you would say to yourself, great, I fell in love with someone and that's fantastic and we're going to have a family together. And he'll take me to a country where healthcare is better, where sanitation is better, where safety is better, where education is better for our children. I don't know if Karine is thinking that, but it makes sense, right? So it's always interesting. I wonder sometimes if the path that gets people to this point actually leads them to have paranoias about that. There's a lot of me hypothesizing and speculating in this situation. I wonder sometimes if the Pauls and the Big Eds and the Lises on this show have had a track record, and they often will talk about this, of very, very difficult romantic relationships where it's really hard for them to find someone to fall in love with. It's really hard for them to sustain a relationship. And why is that? Well, there's a lot of potential reasons, but often it has to do with some kind of childhood trauma around abandonment, something that caused the young child to not really trust other people very much. And so then that leads them to look to other countries to start dating because they feel like they've exhausted all the possibilities in their own community and it hasn't worked. And so they're like, okay, I give up on American people. I'm just going to date someone in another country. And it feels good at first because the idealization of the relationship is sustained for a lot longer because you actually don't have a chance to fight in person. And so it feels really good. It's like, finally, I found a person. And, Brazilian people are just so much more open and nice than American people. These kinds of narratives. And maybe they're true, maybe they're not. But you could see someone kind of, because of the early childhood traumas and mistreatment leading to dating and romantic relationship difficulties, leading to giving up, leading to going online. But the retention of that early distrust of people eventually weasels its way into the assumptions about the other person, and this working model of other people that they can't be trusted, or a working model of the self that no one's really going to, sure, she seems like she loves me, but she can't really love me because no one's ever really loved me. So why would she be being so nice to me? Well, it must be because of a green card, that kind of thing. So it'd be an interesting research project to take everyone on this show and do a full battery of personality assessments. I would love to do that research project. I'm sure it'll never happen, but it would be interesting to find out, or even just a research project on people that date people in other countries. I do know that there is some research on that, but not a lot, and nothing along the lines of what I'm talking about. Anyway, let's get back to the show.
Here, let me get the bottom part because it's heavier.
No, I got it. I got it. Just take that.
Okay.
I don't know why he's going back. He thinks he's in love with her, and she thinks he's in love with him, but they still don't speak their language, and they don't, really know each other. I think it's crazy. I just hope that he doesn't have any panic attacks and he stays safe.
Interesting. So she just said, I hope he doesn't have any panic attacks, as you heard. And that indicates, because I was wondering earlier about the extent of his anxiety. So if we're hearing about the existence of panic attacks, then, and they're actual legit panic attacks, then that does indicate legit anxiety. If you have regular panic attacks, even if it's once a month, that can be crippling, because not only is the panic attack horrible, but the worry about having a panic attack is also just completely debilitating. So when he was talking in a previous episode about having OCD and he's a germaphobe, he seems to laugh about it, but I wonder if it actually is a legitimate disorder that he's suffering from.
We can actually look at each other and talk, so it makes it easier than just constantly typing. I hope it will make it easier to talk about our problems.
Coco?
All right, well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Thanks for joining me out there. Please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.